etc., etc. So it hasn't changed. The control system hasn't changed, but the ability to bring change has. In other words, that the environment is now ready for a change. And that comes back to what I said earlier, is whether the vast majority of people are ready for that change. We are, but what about the people who are very frightened of what that will bring? Two cultures of great interest, Sumerian and Babylonian. Now I've got an object I'm going to hand round. I'll just have a look at it. You can handle it very carefully, but I do want it back. It is a Babylonian seal. And that's not a creature that sits on a piece of wood or something and bands the ball on its head and flaps its flippers. It is actually a real seal used, if we're going to talk about Jesus, it's 1,800 years before Christ. It's really important. What you're going to be looking at is the seal. It's made of stone, it has a hole in it so that these are kept as a library. So in Babylon, they were kept hundreds, thousands. It was their library. And then what you would do is you put a piece of metal like a coat hanger through it, and then you would impress it on wet clay, and it was their history. And here also, it's a bit difficult to see, but is a piece of clay with it on. And the reason this is really important is it has two gods, using the term loosely of course, two gods, and then what I've always called the wings of home, which is the Assyrian, Babylonian disc with the wings, which represents Nibiru, also represents spaceship. So I'm going to pass that round. Please have a look. It's really special. So it's 1,800 years. It's not a replica, it's the real deal. Oh, my water. I'm just purifying it with radio waves. There's a book here. I put a card in there. If you turn it to that, you'll see this is von Daniken's book, and there's pictures here of a Sumerian seal. Remember, it's different cultures, but the Babylonians took their culture from the Sumerians, and you'll actually see very similar ones there. In von Daniken called the tree of life. I think that's a misrepresentation. I would say that in this case it's the tree of knowledge, because we're talking about technology. So we'd assume it would be the tree of knowledge. You want to just pass that around and go with it so that you can have a look at that. So while that's going round, let's crack on. Babylonian bugs. For those who do follow, listen very kindly to the radio show that I do on a 2-weekly basis, and also interviews that I and Win Keach have done. Win Keach is an innovator. I don't want to bore you. Are you all familiar with Win Keach? No. Some of you are, some of you not. Okay. Win Keach is not like me. He's a Palladian. I'm not. And it took him 5 years to learn to trust me, because I've got quite a proportion of reptilian in me. And he spent many lifetimes fighting my family. But you know what? If we're going to heal and we're going to bring things together, then we have to stop fighting each other, and we have to say, let's work for the common good. And I do get annoyed with people who, as soon as they hear the word reptilian or this or that or the other, immediately go on the defensive. And I want you to imagine that you're on a train. It doesn't matter which railway station you got on from, whether it was Reptilian Central or Palladian Highway. It's the station you're getting off on. If you're all moving from one location into the light, if you're all choosing the same way, then it's important that we are not judged. As humans are very good. We're good at judging ourselves or judging others. And in his case, he had to do some, and I'm sure he won't mind me saying this, he had to do some healing of himself to do that. And we now work very well and very close together. Win Keach was the guy that invented the codes. Every time you put a debit card or a credit card into a machine to pay for it, he invented the codes. Nobody else on the planet was capable of doing that. So much so that the National Security Agency flew from Fort Worth to where he lives. He lives 5 miles away from me, and that again is no coincidence. And said, there isn't a code on the planet that we can't break, but we can't break yours. Now, it was very interesting because they had prevented him from travelling to America. He is a crop circle researcher, and they banned him from the States because of his crop circle work. So it was funny that here they were now in their blacked out vehicles, all expenses paid, to Maryland, to NSA headquarters. The deal was done. Basically, he shared that information and they gave him the rights to go to America whenever he wanted to. What we decided, based on his work, was that we needed to challenge, and there are many other people who are working on this, challenge the Babylonian bucks. Money is only the way it is because it has a spell on it. And to me, spells are technology, but let's keep it like that. Money has a spell on it, this fourth dimensional spell. And if we can move away from the concept of money gradually to a barter and a trade system, then we can break the unfairness of interest, the unfairness of control. As one person once said to me, banks only lend money to people that don't need it. So we are working on a system that allows anybody to barter and exchange on their mobile phone. So it's an app that will go on your phone. Yes, it can buy things on eBay. Yes, it can work with PayPal, but that's not the point of it. The point of it is that if you put £10 or $10 into it, it's going to be converted into a different currency. A currency that is matched against the value of other products. So that if there's a devaluation in your own country, that does not affect the ability of this. If you took the money out, then immediately it would be devalued. It's a way of exchanging from one to one, a small business. So let's say, for instance, you're a guy who's got 500 pints of milk and you've got 5 days left on it. And you can't shift it, but the guy down the road has got something that you want. Well, this device will search for what you're looking for, suggest a price or an exchange value, but it's up to those two people to actually decide whether they can make that exchange and how they do it. So, and it's not taxable. There's no tax to pay. And unlike eBay or unlike PayPal, there wouldn't be this huge extortionate rates. How many times have, perhaps not here, but when you go to more rural areas, there's a card up saying, sorry, we can't take card anymore, just cash, because we're being charged such an extortionate rate by the banks. And that's happening more and more now. So we're working on that because we actually believe that there is a financial situation coming this October, and it's not just me. Since January of this year, 3 major newspapers, the Telegraph, the Mail and the Times, have all carried front page articles saying that there is a Wall Street crash coming in October, and they're likening it to the 1929 crash in America. It's been talked about for years, but for years and years it's been prevented. I think we're on the verge of it now, and we would like this up and running in time for that, which is October. So one of the ways for the human race to be free is to break the connection that money has over us. Chemtrails. When I talk about chemtrails, it's something that comes and goes in our psyche in terms of, or when it becomes a flavour or topic on the net. This country has seen a huge change between January and March. I've never seen so many chemtrails in the skies. And not just the normal chemtrails, crisscrossed and then bombarded by HAARP. And that's when you see the crisscrossing and the ripple effect. That's when HAARP has been pushed through it. Probably everything you've read about chemtrails from a bona fide site is true. What I wanted to add was the bit that's not appearing very much on the sites. Global warming is true in the sense that the planet's warming. But I do not agree with the scientific and the political view as to global warming. All the planets are warming up, and this is because of the star, the sun. One of the ways to prevent human race evolving is to cut our contact with the star. So they are actually putting, since sort of November of last year, they've been putting another material into the chemtrails in the hope of reflecting back a certain wavelength of light. Because it's this wavelength of light that is actually affecting us and helping us to evolve. Anything on this planet that can get the sunlight will actually speed up a little bit. So some of these chemtrails have had this material to not stop but reduce that. So just be aware, that's why you've seen the change in it, the crisscrossing and the use of HARP to agitate the chemicals. That's why HARP's been pushed in there. There's tiny bits of metal. Stretching time. One of the ways that negative forces can buy themselves more time is to actually stretch time. There was questions to Dennis earlier about feeling tired, and Dennis's answer was right, and I think the questioner knew the answer anyway. But how many of us feel that we have less time to do the same amount of work? If we think back over the last 10 years, we seem to be more pressed. People say, well, it's a busier world, technology, this, that, and the other. I'm sure that's true, but I actually believe that we are having less time to achieve the same amount of work. One of the ways that the negatives can try and combat the evolving of humanity is to stretch the timeline. They cannot stop it, but they stretch it, and I try to explain it like this. If I take a piece of plastic or rubber like that, and I put it next to a ruler and I calibrate it 1 to 12, because we're going to be, old-fashioned, and then I stretch it, I've still got the same number of calibrations. I've still got the same material in that rubber band. But what I've done is I've elongated it and stretched it. And that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to stretch out time so that it gives them more opportunities to play games and hope that something happens. I want to do 1 or 2 case studies. It's not widely known the sort of work I do. I'm seen as a person who goes around and tours and does the talk and does the radio show, but I'll give you some bits of ideas about the sort of stuff that I do. I gave up the day job. I was a driving instructor. I love that. It was really good. But I had to decide really and truly where my heart lay, or where my responsibility lay. And I served a full term of office as a local councillor, Labour Party, and I then said that I would not go through to the next round. Basically, I wouldn't stand again because I felt conflicted. Because the deeper I got into it, then the more I felt that I might be compromised. So, I just pulled my name off the list. Having served as a Labour councillor in London, and then in the town that I currently live in, I think that I've understood quite a bit about the control system on this planet, and that was one of the reasons I did that. And I also said, as long as I was doing good, then, and the good outweighed the bad, then I thought that was useful. And it came to a time when I thought that the good wasn't as much as I would like it to be, so time to go. So, a number of years ago, I left that all behind and do what I do. Case studies. First of all, if somebody in the technical term bad comes to me for help, I won't turn them away if they genuinely want to change. So the first case study I want to give you is a person who came to me, and at the time I thought that they had self-referred, but I now realise that they were sent by the Rothschilds. Had I known it was the Rothschilds, I would have charged a huge amount of money, because the Rothschilds can afford to pay. This particular individual, and the reason I'm doing this is because it's not about fear or tell you how bad it is and how awful it is and isn't it all dreadful. I wanted to let you know to the depth of manipulation that is taking place, so that you can understand that much of what you see and occur I take my hat off, is incredibly clever. I've been doing it for a very long time. So it is a shocking case, and it's the truth, and here we go with it. An individual who could trace a history back to the Nazis, not in this country, had 2 children. He was then approached by what we would call the Illuminati, the evil end of the Illuminati, and they said to him that they could make him very rich and very powerful, but as a sign that he would give his all to the organisation, he had to sell his children. This is normal, this is standard practice. So he sold both children to the Illuminati for $1 million 25 years ago. As part of this process, these children were hurt. This is a normal thing for these people who want to create what we call alternate personalities. This particular young woman had 6 alternate personalities. She had a suicide program. This is a program that kicks in when the individual becomes self-aware and can name names. It could be people like Marilyn Monroe, who suddenly end their lives. So many people in the high-end world, as the Americans would say, take their own life, and it's put down to drink or drugs or stress. In many cases, it is a suicide program that is activated because that individual was on the verge of naming names. So this person had a suicide program. They also had a demonic possession. That's very standard during fourth dimensional rituals. Then some of these things are introduced into the physical body or the auric field. And she had visitors from other places. Now, it took me 5 months to clear this person. It's the most difficult case that I've ever had. It took me 5 months to do that. But what's heartening here is that apparently the father, when he saw what was being done to his children, he bought them back. And you can do that. And those of you who have any knowledge of Freemasonry know that you can buy your way out of the Freemasons. So he bought them back for $1 million. Within just a few short days of doing that, this guy was a governor of a city. He was removed from office as a governor of the city. He was also the owner of a football club. I don't mean a British football club. And he was removed from that. But he was still a successful businessman, and they let him continue because he could be useful to them. Now, the Illuminati is a patriarchal system, and it was always designed that the children of this man would go and work for a very special, powerful family. Special and powerful, I don't mean spiritually, I mean financially. But this son had been so badly damaged that he was not capable of holding a job. I'll give you some idea. I'm not going to publicly tell you what has happened, because that's just not necessary. The woman, the young girl, wasn't so badly damaged. Now, the rules are that if the male can't take the job, you don't go outside of the family, you have to give it to the female. So this young woman approached me for help, and at the time I assumed, like so many others who come to me, it was a self-referral. And as took me just about 5 months, that young woman now does have a job, she does sleep properly, she doesn't have a suicide program, she doesn't sit there with a pair of scissors cutting herself or a knife. She can walk past a high-rise block without wanting to climb the stairs and jump out. But she now works for the Rothschilds. There are a number of vitamin factories which have been paid for by Rothschild money set up around the world. The plan being that all vitamins are going to be removed from all foods, but if you're part of the elite, you will be able to buy your vitamins from these Rothschild factories. So she's the manager of one of these factories. Now, people who are not so enlightened would say to me, why in God's name are you helping somebody like that? And I reply by saying, when she was a child, she never asked to be tortured. You know, you don't make a judgment like that. Someone is that badly damaged, and if you are capable of making them better, then I will always do it. And I say to my clients, imagine the Grand Canyon, especially if they're American, and I put a bridge across it. You're on one side and I'm on the other. If you can walk 51% across that bridge, then you are enough in control of yourself to decide what you want to do. There are a number of people who approach me and they're just not ready, they just can't do it. So I want you to appreciate that there are a number of people in high positions who are blackmailed, threatened, and they are doing things which are not positive because they live in fear and they are indeed victims themselves. You know, we've got to be very careful that we don't just say that all of these people are beyond forgiveness. There are a very large number of our politicians who are absolutely blackmailed, told to do what they need to do, or else, you know, certain things will happen. We'll talk about Theresa May. Theresa May, if she was free, would resign immediately. She wants out. She's had it. She wants no more of it because she's sick of everything that's gone on around her. But they're not letting her resign. Now, for people outside of this room, you'd say, well, you know, I walked out of my job. You know, I worked for wherever and I walked out. Why can't she walk out? The reality is that she can't. It's like MI5, you can't resign. My mother was murdered because she asked to leave the organisation before they were ready to let her go. You know, I understand entirely why MI5 murdered my mother. It doesn't make it right and I don't forgive them, but I understand why they did it. And in her case, she is going to be the scapegoat. They're keeping her in that position because there is probably a more difficult situation to be faced in the coming months. They'll blame it all on her, remove her, and then maybe Boris Johnson will come in or somebody else. By which time everyone will be sick and tired of politics and we need a complete change. I was going to do 2 case studies. I'm not, because I'm aware that the energy around this is quite difficult, but I did want you to, thank you. I did want you to appreciate that not everybody who appears to be attacked in the media is doing it because they love it. They're doing it because they've been forced to do it. This is, I'm going to end on a funny one here. Well, it's funny. I think it's funny. The original Star Trek, the best ever. What's interesting is that although I can't remember now whether the reptile fashions this dagger, it is an almost exact copy of what we call the obsidian knife that the Aztecs used for their sacrificial purposes. And again, we've got Gene Roddenberry, who created Star Trek and had very much an influence in the making of the TV series. For those of you who don't know, Gene Roddenberry was on a domestic air flight from one American city to another, and he saw a UFO. He saw an alien spacecraft, and out the window of this aircraft. And then he went and joined a group of channelers, started to get information from the channelers, and that's why he did Star Trek, because he was using information that the channelers provided with him, and he started doing his own research. So it's not The Simpsons, it's not Back to the Future, it's a TV series that was familiar with everyone. Look how these iconic directors obtain their information. Because if it's rooted in truth, it'll sell. If you provide something that's got no basis, the planet rejects it. Okay, that's why reptilians, in their true form, don't have humanity in them, in the true sense of the word. The planet rejects them. That's why they went down the hybridizing program. Because if you mix reptilian and human, then there's more chance to be accepted by the planet. And I think I'm going to take some questions. This statement isn't really for you. I'm going down to London tomorrow. I'm doing the talk at Kerry Cassidy's, and I'm sure being closer to London there'll be these sort of questions. So I'm happy to take any questions, but I will not give my opinion in regard to other people within the truth movement. Please make up your own minds. And I'm particularly referring to the situation between Corey Good, Bill Ryan, and the dark journalist. I understand that there is a legal case now going to be opened. So I'm not going to be drawn into that. But other than that, I'm quite happy to take any questions.
What did you think of that Swiss banker, Bernard, talking about sacrifice and being threatened all his life?
I didn't put that on today because I'm aware that this is a different type of conference. It's not the hard edge cutting that I perhaps would normally attend. However, I'm not going to say, well, you don't need to know that, because then I would be as bad as the elite. So I've touched on it. You've asked the question, I'll answer it. For those of you who don't know, there was a banker who very bravely has gone on YouTube and talked about how he was promoted within his banking network, and how he saw other people, and it got to the point where he had to get out because of what he was seeing. And I'm not talking about people playing monopoly money and stealing money. I'm talking about the terrible things that go on with the elite as part of their culture within satanic control and within the blackmail. And he went on and said basically that so many people were blackmailed, what we were talking about earlier, and they didn't have any freedom. But he's proved it. He's proved he was brave. He's actually come through, and as a shining example, has said, look, this is what's happened. I'm prepared to come forward and tell you the truth. BBC, ITV, even the little local radio stations are all part of a control system. When I first went public, it's no surprise it was the Scarborough Evening News that first attacked me. And the owner of the Scarborough Evening News is a prominent Freemason. Here's where it gets really complicated. I can sit down and have dinner with the Knights Templars, and have a problem with the Knights Templars, but I do have a problem with the other arms of Freemasonry. And this is what we see. We see one group of the elite working in one way and another group in another. So he was true, he was telling the truth, he was a very brave man. How long he will live for, I really don't know. But he was very brave and has come out. I think actually that he's probably going to be okay because he's such a high profile now that if anything happened to him, people would say, well, there must be truth in what he said. But banking is one of the worst movements you can get into. Question. Go out the back.
Just going down the theme of Hollywood's influence in indoctrination through film, I wondered what your personal view was, if any, on perhaps an explanation on the Mandela effect.
It's very popular with young people to debate that at the moment. If we believe that humanity is evolving, and we believe that there are other timelines, and that some of us can create those timelines and see that reality. If we think through history, where certain individuals perhaps have popped up from time to time, there are people actually, not many of them, who can actually stand in a street and see a different image just for a second, and then it comes back to this reality. There have been a number of, I haven't had the time to research it, but there have been a number of car crashes in this country, in the United States, that the authorities cannot explain, where the road has been absolutely straight and the car has veered off dramatically and ploughed into something and killed them. Now, what I learned over the last 3 years is that those individuals are seeing the road bend to the right. So they turn the wheel to the right. The reason I learned that is that I have, on 3 occasions, walked down the stairs in my house, and when I've looked down, I've seen one of the treads completely disappear. A massive drop. And I physically jumped. And I know that it's solid, and I'll turn back and it's just normal. And I've touched it, and it's solid. But for a second, I don't see it there. This is the matrix, this is the holograph that around us, that's hung on us. I do believe in it. I don't believe in some of the crazy stories that are being attached to it. But there are some individuals who are aware of that effect. And it's based on truth. Thank you. Hello.
Hi, Simon. I've heard that they have to enforce what they're planning, like when they put stuff in the Simpsons and stuff, because that's part of their magic to get our sort of approval and our consent without us realising. What do you think about that?
Right, yes, you're right. I'm just going to change the wording of it, but you are correct. It's not about getting our approval for it, it's about nobody saying no.
Our consent.
Yeah, well, what they're saying is because you've not brought the word no, you must be consensual. It's about what Dennis and others have said. If you are of a higher intellect, not necessarily higher spiritually, the human race has the potential to be incredibly spiritual, and it already is. But if you have a higher intellect, you will argue the point that we wouldn't argue. You'd sit there for years, hundreds of years, thousands of years saying, do we have the right to intervene? Because when we are all created by the great creator, we are inculcated into the concept of free will. So for those of you who I'm sure you all know, your soul is about 18 inches in length. I don't do centimetres, I'm sorry, I'm too old-fashioned. So your soul sits from here to here, and it's rugby ball shaped or American football shaped, sits in there. That is you. That's really who you are. And the moment that you're created without any physical body, the great creator says to you, where do you want to go? That's really important, because what you're being asked is make a decision. This is about free will. And if you make that decision, then you're already on that journey. So we have to make our decisions of free will. And if we don't flag things up, if we don't say, I object, the fact that we keep quiet is a sign that we've agreed to it. You see, Dennis is right. How can billions of people allow a handful of others to rule them badly? You must agree to it. You must have agreed to it. Because if you didn't, you'd wash them all away. There's billions of us. But that's to miss the point of manipulation and trickery. The vast majority of human people are good, kind, decent and honest. And you can't conceive of somebody else being evil and manipulative and controlling. We wouldn't do it. So we can't believe they do it. And that's where they get us. Because we always want to see the good in people. Okay? So it's about seeing through the trickery. That's a really good question. So the answer is yes. And that's why, and I get very upset, I'm going to be hopefully seeing a guy called Michael Shrimpton and a couple of others tomorrow at Kerry's talks. And one of those guys was put in prison for 6 months for saying there was going to be a bomb exploding at the 2012 Olympics. He actually went to prison for saying that. That shows how free this country is. Now, if he hadn't done that, there probably would have been a bomb exploding. And sometimes I go on my radio show and I will say things because I know that will prevent it happening. Because it's exactly this point, that if somebody steps up and says no, they say, oh, right, okay, they've called us out on that one, we'll do something else 3 months' time, 4 months' time. And this is the game we play, but the problem is, I'm not going to say the animal's name because that's a trigger word, but there is a certain animal that we say, you've called, I won't say the word, I won't say it, you've called that animal, and if you call that name enough times, people stop reacting. So we've got to be very careful every time somebody says something, because next time I say something, people might not believe me. So I have to make a judgment call. How much time have we got left?
Another 5 days.
That's
eventually.
If I had a present, I would give it to you. Hello.
Do you believe the Queen is reptilian, and is there any truth in the missing children from Canada back in the late 60s, early 70s? Okay.
Before I answer that question, can I just
Catholic children?
Yeah, can I just ask your partner, is she well? Do you need to take a rest? Are you sure? Okay. Now, I am aware that you are struggling. When David Icke talked about the Queen, sadly he lost a great deal of support, partly because the Queen is held as this great iconic figure, and it was a jump too much. For many people it's quite easy to understand you have a psychopathic government, that they're just there to rip you off, that corporations are only interested in your money. That's easy to understand because it's in our face. But to say that the Queen was really a reptilian, lost it for David. But David was right to do that. So yes, I do.